The point of this video starts out with three simple points. The vaccine has no long-term testing, it's zero liability, and anyone can refuse for lack of informed consent. So to begin, the vaccine is zero liability. No one can sue. What does that mean? No one can sue for a direct vaccine injury, for personal injury, and collect a settlement for it. So if someone goes to sue, and let's say it's a like vertigo where they get paralysis or something, especially if it's something severely debilitating for the rest of their life, like let's say you can only move from the neck up, you're paralyzed, right? You'd get 10 to 20 million, maybe even way more than that. As soon as you start going into wrongful deaths, right, where someone dies from the vaccine, you're looking at 20 million plus. Usually it's 30 or even higher than that, depending on the severity. So the vaccinated will try to argue that, oh, you still can sue. And the examples they give are absolutely mindless. The examples they give are, oh, you can sue because of the compensation programs. That doesn't count. Compensation programs have nothing to do with being able to sue directly for injury in civil court for personal injury. And the other thing they'll do is they'll try to give all these other examples for other legal court cases, like, oh, you can sue for negligence, or you could sue for fraud, and you could sue for like willful misconduct. I'm like, yeah, those are all completely different lawsuits. It's stemming from an injury. You know, if you get injured and there's an administrative component to it, and you were, let's say, duped into taking it because there was ethical misrepresentation, right? You're not going to get the same settlement for an ethical misrepresentation case as you would for a direct injury, okay? They're completely different things. If I want to prove to you I'm riding a bicycle and I can ride a bicycle, I'm not just going to say, oh, look at this video of me riding a skateboard, right? It doesn't count. And that's pretty much the end of it. You can't sue, and the vaccinated are in complete denial over it, and it's hilarious. And here's an example of a consent waiver form. So some of these will have different wording. They're all designed to force educate you on things like emergency use authorization, not being able to sue, zero liability, and then risks, which include paralysis and death. And it says it right there. So even with this, if people, they'll go in and they'll say, oh, I signed the leaflet. I know I have informed consent because I signed the leaflet and the waiver and all this stuff, right? No, you voluntarily consented. What you signed was on their end under policies, and people don't even have to do this. You can get vaccinated without looking at any of this stuff. You could walk into Shoppers Drug Mart. I'm in Canada, so it's basically a pharmacy. And you could get your appointment. You don't have to look at any of this stuff. You could just ask them, is it safe? And they'll say, yes, it's safe. And I've actually got this all recorded too, that I've done that 13 times, where I went and essentially I interrogated the pharmacist, and I played dumb at first. I'm like, oh, I'm looking to get my booster and that, and none of them, absolutely none of them, could articulate what emergency use authorization was. They all said it was safe right off the bat, and then I started going into detail about, well, what about the blank information form? And they say, oh, we throw those out. I'll get the audio, I'll give it to you guys so you can see. So regarding informed consent, here's how it works. When people go to take the vaccine, they're voluntarily consenting, right? They can get the information they want. They're free to ask the doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist, whoever it is, information and questions, but they don't have legal informed consent. And the reason for that is all the testing is not released and made public, right? You don't have to read it, but it has to be available, okay? And the safety testing wasn't even done properly, and there's no long-term testing, right? So essentially what this means from a legal standpoint is that people can go and say, oh, I consented, right? That's fine. But at any point, if someone says, well, I'm just not going to take it because the data's not all released, right? I don't have legal informed consent to make an informed decision. You can officially write your own exemption letter and refuse for lack of informed consent. And here's an example here, right, where everyone's heard the 75-year story, right? But the issue with this, okay, people will play mental gymnastics over the 75 years about, oh, they didn't say it, they didn't mean it that way, right? They said they needed time to release it, right? Well, the issue is that you're still taking the vaccines in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, and even the FOIA request didn't complete until 2022 at the end of it, right? So, and we'll go, if you look at this, There's still, in 2024, they're still being ordered in January. Federal judge orders CDC to release data on 7.8 million COVID vaccine adverse event reports. So just this alone, you can refuse the vaccine for that. You could say, no, I want to know what's in that data, and you have a legal right to. This is a great one here. Researchers rush to test coronavirus vaccine in people without knowing how well it works on animals, right? But the interesting part about this is you fast forward to 2 years later, and it's without completing human trials, agency will assess new jab based on mice research and older vaccines. And it says at the bottom, instead, the FDA is relying on data from other sources like research in mice and older vaccines. So the point of bringing this up is how you can go 2 years, and this is right in the news, and this should clue people in, right? About like, hey, wait, maybe I should look into how it's been tested, what's been done with the clinical trials and things even past there, right? 2021, FDA panel member, quote, we're never going to learn about how safe the vaccine is until we start giving it. It's just the way it goes. I'm sure it is, eh? So this is from UK. So this one actually was first published in 2020, and you can see it right here. So it was first published in 2020 in December, and it says the use of vaccine in pregnant women cannot be provided at this time, blah, blah, blah. We need more research. And to rule out suspected pregnancy prior to vaccination, women who are breastfeeding should also not be vaccinated. So they keep updating the date on this. So the point to this is it's still updated now. You can go check this yourself. The point to this is that it's the government saying it, it's public, and magically it contradicts where they say it's safe for pregnancy. And it's mind-blowing. Like you show this to someone who is pregnant in 2021, and I've actually done this and it worked quite well, and it snaps them out of it. It snaps them out of that brainwashing from the magic wizard on TV. And while we're on the subject of the UK, there are people in the UK that seem to believe that because their vaccine isn't under EUA, because they associate EUA with the United States term, right, that their vaccine is magically safe. And there's one guy that was trying to argue this point with me, and he actually posted this link trying to argue that, it's not emergency use authorization. It's like, yeah, it says marketing authorization. It's the same thing. The UK just uses that terminology, right? And you can see it here too. UK authorized, FDA approved for emergency use, right? So you're not getting away with this, right? Like if you're in UK and you took a Pfizer vaccine, right? You're delusional if you think that it's not the same thing as if you're sitting in Ohio taking it. It's the same thing, right? Same as in Canada. We get the Pfizer one too. It says emergency use authorization right on the box, right on the vial. You ask the pharmacist, they don't even know what that means, right? And generally speaking, to get EUA approval, there has to be a pandemic, and there has to be, an urgent situation, and there has to be no other reasonable alternative. So a few things that have come up, like ivermectin, right, gets demonized, and like it's at the point where if the government said penicillin's bad, you can't take it anymore, people would just agree with it. Like there's a high percentage of the population that they would demonize penicillin, and people would fucking go along with it too. And the blank information sheet, as you can see, this version here is a regular flu related one. That's normal. This one here is for the vaccines. It's intentionally blank, right? Now, there's a QR code on it, right? So the pharmacists, they see this, and they just throw it in the garbage. And I have this recorded of them saying they've done this, right? So when they throw it in the garbage, they don't even know what emergency use authorization is properly to tell people, right? But the correct answer is you go to the QR code on it, and it takes you back to the information sheet, which is officially the information sheet that should be on this form, right? And on there, it lists everything they possibly can about the vaccine that they want to, including emergency use authorization. So if someone goes step by step, they go in to get informed consent, they'd be like, well, why is it blank? Let me check the form. Then look at the form. What's EUA? No one wants to fucking explain it to me, so I'm not taking the vaccine today. Simple as that. And if you want to go far enough, you could say, I'm not taking it because it's emergency use authorization. And you write that in a letter, you submit it to, let's say, your employer, or if you're even retired, you go travel or something like that, you can fly with an exemption for lack of informed consent because you can. This is a more difficult topic for people, but being legally deemed not a risk to public health. How do you do that, right? We'll get into that one day. But it is absolutely possible to do, and it's the same process, right? You just have to stop listening to the media script and actually just learn your basic legal rights. So in September of 2023, they updated EUA. So most of the stuff I'm talking about happened to be Pfizer or something like that. So just go with it, right? It's similar for everybody for all the vaccines, but in this case for Pfizer, they get new approval for the vaccine into 2023, 2024. So the XBB 1.5 ABCD XYZ, right? And here everyone is clapping their hands. Oh, it's approved again. The new one's safe. No, it's just approved for EUA. Like you can read it right in their documents. It's insane. And here's another one people will use, right? When you bring up EUA, they'll say, oh, but it was approved. That doesn't matter. It's still based on the same clinical trials that were only good enough to put it under EUA. So when you do safety testing after the fact, post-authorization EUA safety testing from like December of 2020 to February of 2021, right? And take that data, that doesn't magically make it safe enough. Like they can slap approval on anything. Like, oh, here's a bottle of bleach. It's approved because we found this percentage of people that if you take this tiny amount, you'll be fine, right? So this is irrelevant to people that actually care about their health. People that try to defend this and say it's approved, you might as well just wrap your lips around an exhaust pipe. And this is one that the vaccinated in 2024 love not knowing about. Nothing would make them happier than not knowing that at one point the government, the White House, and media outlets everywhere were saying that the vaccine can stop COVID, stop the transmission of COVID 100%. 100% effective. Yep. That aged like spoiled milk. And then we fast forward to 2023, September. This is right after they did the approval for EUA again for the new variant, right? Tell everybody don't rely on the facts that you've had a vaccine in the past. It will not help you this time around. Oh, looks like everyone who's vaccinated is not vaccinated now, right? That's right. You might have 7 boosters or 3 boosters, but you're legally considered unvaccinated now. You need another one. And I'll just add a little bonus in here at the end. So mask use, right? We all know about those cloth diapers that people virtue signal with and they wear in 30 degrees temperatures in the summertime in 2024, right? Some people just won't take them off. And you know what? The people I'm not referring to are people that the masks actually have a health benefit for. You remember before COVID, there were certain people in the populations that were wearing masks for certain things, like especially if they were elderly. They're exempt from my bashing here, right? But I'm talking about healthy people wearing this stuff. So fabric mask covering, not yet supported by high quality direct scientific evidence. Limited and inconsistent scientific evidence. Found no difference in infection. Oh, that's interesting. So World Health Organization loves to not bring that up again, right? The vaccine has no long-term testing, right? There's no long-term testing for fertility, pregnancy, neurological, cardiovascular, or even cancer, right? It's zero liability. You can't sue for a direct vaccine injury at all, right? For personal injury. And anyone can refuse for lack of informed consent. The safety data is not all released. We got EUA all over the place and now that marketing authorization. People's standards are too low, right? That's why you're not going to convince anyone to take it, right? You want to take 3 vaccines, go ahead. It doesn't matter. You can take as many as you want. I support your right to take as many vaccines as you want, even if they say approved or if they're experimental, whatever. The problem is people lying about their legal rights, right? We got these vaccinated people in 2024 that are not only clueless about what zero liability means, they are denying that there's no long-term testing, and they have no idea what informed consent means or that people can refuse, right? So making these claims like oh, you can sue, and oh, it was tested, and the fucking evidence is the clinical trials. It's like, that doesn't count, man. You lined up for a booster, for a pat on the head and a jelly donut or a blue jelly bean. That's likely for a toddler.